Hi, and welcome everybody to the Winner Circle Sports Betting Channel. My name is Ross Benjamin, host of the Winner Circle Sports Betting Podcast, brought to you by Gamblers World, where you'll find 10 of the finest handicappers in the country, not only myself, but these two gentlemen and seven others as well. And when I say these two gentlemen, they are gentlemen, and they've been doing this for a long time successfully. Mr. Chip Chirimbes and also Mr. Paul Bovi. Paul, how was your weekend, my friend?
It wasn't bad. It could have been better. We had a few winners. We did give out our free play last week on Tennessee LA Chargers over the 45. It landed 45 right on the number before they went to overtime, and we eclipsed the total. Uh, we did have a few winners. We had a few losers, but all in all, not a bad weekend, and we look forward to bigger and better things.
There you go. Paul's one. He puts his money where his mouth is. If he tells you it's a 10 dime play or a 5 dime play, that's exactly what he's doing.
Right.
And he puts his ticket that he wagered on that game right in his analysis. So you can't be any more transparent than that, folks. Uh, Speaking of transparency, Mr. Chirimbes, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. Great weekend in baseball, but choppy in football. Haven't gotten my footing yet. I led with Jacksonville, which was a big mistake, but still, Ross, I'm able to come through on those Thursday, Sunday, and Monday night games. And we had two more winners this week, so looking forward to it each and every weekend.
All right. You can find these two gentlemen at gamblersworld.net, as I alluded to. You could also find me there as well. Gamblersworld.net. Our single game and multi game daily packages are all guaranteed, as well as all subscription plans of 30 days or less. If you don't win, you don't make a profit. We will credit your account back the exact amount of your purchase price, and you can use it at any time on anyone you wish for any future purchases. So, a great assurance there. I'm coming off a dream weekend, guys. 7-0 in college football,
Wow.
5-0 in the NFL, a 12-0 weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all documented at every site I'm on. And since last Tuesday, I mix in a 3-1 in the MLB since last Tuesday, and I'm on a 15-1 all sports run. So had a top play winner on the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday. Also had a top play winner on the Florida Gators plus the points at home against Tennessee. So it's kind of weekend, guys, we all dream about, and we've all encountered on occasion. But as you well know, all you guys is for sure. Those are so few and far between. Winning is a habit with all of us, but going 12-0 on a football weekend is like, holy cow. Anyway, all right, so we got some games that we want to talk about, and Paul's going to be looking at the Green Bay and New Orleans game. Chipper's going to cover the Buffalo Bills at the Washington Commanders, and I'm going to be looking at the Atlanta Falcons at the Detroit Lions. Three very competitive games, three intriguing matchups in my eyes. Let's start with you, Chipper. The Bills bounce back, blowing out the Raiders on Sunday. Josh Allen silenced a lot of the critics, at least temporarily, with his performance in that game. But Washington's look good. I mean, you got to give them a lot of credit. Yes, they just got by in their season opener 20-16 against Arizona. Might have been even lucky to win the game. But last week, they stormed back from a huge deficit to overcome Denver on the road and win that game going away. What do you got for us on this one, Chip?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting here. Washington is 2-0. They've had two wins against probably the two weakest teams in the NFL. They very fortunate to beat Arizona at home. And, after going down 21-3, Peyton and the rest of the Broncos, Wilson included, set the rest of the afternoon off except for a final drive. And Washington was able to come back because they've got great intestinal fortitude, and they really come to play for Rivera. But what's happened to the Buffalo Bills, they got sort of waylaid or surprised by the Jets. And everyone was bad-mouthing them, and they were going to play the Raiders, who had a great day, opening day, and again beating Denver, another weak team. I wasn't surprised at what happened with Buffalo. I had them as a free play out there. The line was high, and they went out and they just after the first drive in which the Jets scored in 2 minutes and 44 seconds, they just dominated this team. I think our boy Josh Allen completed his first 13 passes. And if the Raiders can't put any kind of pressure on you to break up that kind of rhythm, you're in for a long day. I think Buffalo, that loss to the Jets really reestablished their mindset. They had come off that season-ending loss against the Bengals in the playoffs. And I think they woke up a little bit after that Jet game. And I expected them to come out at Washington and to play tough. I'm afraid with this Washington team because this Howell is 3-0 as a starter. He's threw for 299 yards, I think it was last week. And if he's not going to make any mistakes, they should be in contention and keep this close. I think the number is strong. And that's one of the reasons I like Buffalo. And I think the fact that Washington played two Sisters of the Poor the first two games out, they're going to play a real football team this weekend. I lean toward the Bills.
All right, so Chipper likes the Bills minus the 6.5 on the road against Washington. Yeah, it does look like a heavy number, Chipper, and it does look like they're inviting you to take Washington.
They're at home.
I really like Sam Howell. I've liked him.
Yeah.
Back in his days with North Carolina. The kid's got a lot of charisma.
Right.
He's got a lot of flair. And like you said, Chipper, he limits mistakes, and he looked awfully good in last week's game on the road. I believe it was his first road start, too, at Denver. So,
and, he had Mac Brown helping him out when he was at Carolina. So, I'm sure he's got great football sense. I'm not surprised he's doing this well. But for Washington, it's still early in his career for sure.
Yeah, North Carolina is starting to become a quarterback factory lately. Yeah. You go back to Mitch Trubisky and now Drake May, who's playing for him now, who's definitely an NFL quarterback, and Sam Howell. Paul, anything you want to add to the discussion in this terms of this game? Not necessarily a pick, but just your take maybe on both of these clubs and where they are at this point.
Well, Buffalo may have caught the Raiders just a little bit on a downer. You go into Denver, you win your opener, and you kind of breathe a sigh of relief. So I'm not ready to anoint Buffalo the king of the AFC just yet, but you got to give them credit for the bounce back performance because, as Chip pointed out, they laid an egg against the New York Jets, and they came back, did what they had to do after falling behind 7-0 and one going away. So credit the Buffalo Bills. Let's see if they can keep it going, and Josh Allen could limit his mistakes because that's been his Achilles heel.
Absolutely. And if you watched the game last week, Paul, he was a lot of checkdowns. He took what the defense gave him. And, still I like to see him slide instead of take some hits, unnecessary hits, because like Paul alluded to last week, he did have a concussion, and I was wrong. Back in 2019, he suffered a concussion in the second half against New England, but he didn't miss any time. So that's why I got a little confused. But at the end of the day, not to make any excuses, Mr. Bovi was correct, and I just want to give him credit for that. And the other thing with Buffalo, too, you got to keep in mind, and I'm not making excuses for him. And no, Paul, I agree with you. I'm not ready to anoint them as the king of the AFC. But the bottom line is the Jets defense has had Josh Allen's number over the last 3 meetings. That's a pretty good defense. The problem with the Jets defense is they get a lack of support from their offense. We saw that last week against Dallas. It certainly didn't help losing your starting quarterback and future first ballot Hall of Famer. But, hey, it happens in the NFL. You got to play through injuries in terms of team-wise. Anyway, Paul, we're looking at Green Bay and New Orleans. Green Bay coming off a 1-1 split in the first 2 games on the road. And now they're playing their home opener against a New Orleans team that's 2-0, but a very uninspiring 2-0. I mean, they're coming off a Monday night game. They win by 3 against Carolina. Wasn't really as close as the final score might indicate. Carolina scoring that late touchdown. And then in their season opener, they barely get by at home, 16-15 against Tennessee. What's your take on this game, Paul? Green Bay right now, 2-point home favorite and a total 43.
Well, look at it this way. And I agree with what you're saying about New Orleans, and they have problems protecting Carr. He went down several times last night. He went down 4 times in the opener against Tennessee. So I think that's been their problem in pass protection, and it remains to be seen if they can get that fixed. But I think everybody was high on Green Bay after that opening win over Chicago, and that win doesn't look so hot right now because we all saw what Chicago did in the on Sunday against Tampa Bay, and they were poor. And we know that at this point, Chicago's probably not going to have a very good year. Now, it was an interesting game Sunday because if you bet the opening number on Green Bay, you lost, but Atlanta flipped to as much as a 3-point favorite. So Green Bay, depending on when you played them, did get the cover. But here's the problem with the Packers. In the first game against Chicago, Aaron Jones was represented about 38% of the offense. He had 127 total yards. So now he's out for game 2, along with David Bakhtiari, their left tackle. And you can make an argument that these are the 2 most important players on offense besides Jordan Love. So they have trouble moving the ball, and their receiving core is a bunch of no names. In fact, Dartavius Wicks was the leading receiver. He had 2 receptions for 40 yards. He's a 5th-round draft pick this year. And then you have the other receiver, Dubs, who was drafted last year. And then you had Jaden Reed, who's a 2nd-round pick this year as well. And then you lose Elgin Jenkins, the right guard, during the game. And they did not stop Atlanta. Atlanta ran the ball, the Falcons did, 45 times for 211 yards, only punted 1 time. That's not a recipe for victory. So at this point, you don't know who's going to play on Sunday. And I would represent that if Aaron Jones is out, if Bakhtiari is out, if Jenkins is out, they're going to have trouble with these New Orleans Saints, who, while they were, as you call them, uninspiring, I think they're a better football team right now than the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers are not going to be equipped to beat this team. You have a raw quarterback throwing to raw receivers and a defense that really didn't get it done on Sunday. As I said, Atlanta punted once. They kicked 4 field goals, and they kicked the critical one with time winding down to give them the 1-point win. So I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints. But of course, I'm going to take a step back on this and say, if Bakhtiari is in the lineup, if Aaron Jones is in the lineup, if Jenkins is in the lineup, I might reassess my position.
All right. So right now, New Orleans is a 2-point dog in this situation. I agree with your assessment of the Packers. I had the Packers as one of my 12 winners last week. I just had to mention that. But I was very lucky. And I at the end of the game, I said, if I had to make the same pick again today than I did yesterday when I evaluated on Monday, I wouldn't. Because the Atlanta Falcons outgained the Packers by 222 yards in that game. And one thing they really exposed with that Packers defense is their ability to run the ball at will, especially in the second half. They were over 200 yards rushing for the game in that contest against Green Bay. So don't discount that. If you're having trouble protecting the passer, one thing to alleviate that is to have an effective running game that sets you up well for play action passing and could relieve some pressure on your quarterback that he's had to sustain for the first 2 weeks. Chipper, your take on just your opinions on this game. It doesn't have to be a pick, like I told Paul. Just something in terms of either team and what you observed so far.
Well, I was fortunate enough to have Tennessee this past weekend, one of my few winners, not like Ross, who just sweeps the board Saturdays and Sundays. I mean, that's really nice for us. Congratulations, by the way. Way to go. That's, like you said, it's a dream weekend. And maybe I should have paid a little more closer attention to you when we were speaking during the week. But, It's a tough. This game doesn't do anything for me. I'm really right now. Looked at that Saturday schedule, it was so outrageous with Notre Dame and Ohio State and a few other big games, Florida State and Clemson. But this game on Sunday really hasn't motivated me. And I don't know if Paulie really likes it as a best bet, or is this sort of like a forced play where he's got to have an opinion on it. And I would lay it before I would take it. I'd say that much.
Yeah, I would say, and I'm going to guess, Paul, I can't speak for you, but based on the end of your analysis, where if Aaron Jones and Bakhtiari are in the lineup, that you have to reassess, I wouldn't consider, I don't think that you would want to make that a best bet at this point. Correct?
Well, it's early in the week, and
Yeah.
injuries play such a role. And as I pointed out, Bakhtiari was out for the lion's share of last year, and he really makes this offense go. And then you take Aaron Jones out, they just didn't have anybody. A.J. Dillon carried the ball 15 times for 53 yards, and then you have Jordan Love throwing to these new guys. They just have no offense. And as you pointed out, and I pointed out earlier, they couldn't even stop the run. So the Packers had absolutely no business being in that game because they just didn't stop Atlanta. So if I'm going in armed with the information that I'm going in with the same lineup against New Orleans, even though it's their first home game, you know what? I'm going to go with the Saints to upset them in Lambeau and come away with a win, because as uninspiring as they looked, I think they have a better team. And Carr is just now building up a synergy with his receivers. They mistimed on a few connections last night, and I just think they'll be better as the year goes on.
I think their defense is underrated too, Paul. They've looked good in the first 2 weeks defensively. I know that facing Carolina isn't really a good example of such, because I say that because Carolina's offense is very limited in what they could do. You got a rookie quarterback, very little in the way of talented offensive skilled position players. Adam Thielen is at the latter half of his career, and not a bunch at the running back position there. So, but in the opener against Tennessee, they shut them down as well. And it's not like Green Bay is head and shoulders better than either one of those teams offensively from what I witnessed in the first 2 weeks. Yeah, like that Chicago game, like you alluded to, you can't get carried away with that. Chicago's just a bad team. Okay, so, but we'll see. It's definitely an intriguing matchup, and keep in mind, folks, what Paul said. He does like New Orleans plus the 2, but keep an eye on the injury report and the available status of both Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari, who he says are the 2 most key players on the offensive side of the ball. All right, let me take a look at my game. The Atlanta Falcons at the Detroit Lions, 1:00 Eastern time right now. Detroit is a 3-point favorite in this contest, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on, is the side. And look, Detroit got a lot of hype before the season started. They finished real strong last year. Everybody picking them to win the NFC North. Everybody picking them as the underdog darling going into the season. The regular season win total of 9.5 was the highest it's been in a long time. But they come off that win against Kansas City, 21-20, and then the hype got even more. And then they come home in their home opener against a Seattle team that got blown out at home against the Rams, and they lose 37-31 in overtime to Seattle. Can you say inflate the bubble? I can't. But by any stretch of the imagination, Detroit is still a dangerous team. But they're going to be facing a team that not a lot of people are talking about and not a lot of people give credit to, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. And they're no pushover, folks. I mean, we talk about how Detroit finished last year. Atlanta went 7-10 a season ago, and not much was expected from them. But I like the way they finished with a couple wins, and then they come into this season and win 2 more. And now they've won 4 straight games dating back to last year. Like I alluded to when we were talking about Green Bay, watch out for Atlanta's running game. Not only did they rush for over 200 yards in their win over Green Bay. They're averaging 171 yards per game rushing. They torched the Panthers on the ground in a game. They really were listless in a 24-10 win. But like we talked about, I might have been more impressed in the 1-point win versus the Packers, which they needed a field goal with no time left or little time left, than I was in that 14-point win against Carolina. And this Bijan Robinson, guys, if you have not seen him, I know you saw him when he played at Texas, but if you haven't seen him in the first 2 weeks of the season, this kid is special. He's a real deal. And I look for him to be a key factor in this game. I look for Atlanta to run the ball successfully against Detroit, to keep their offense, I should say, limit Detroit's offensive possessions with ball control. This is also an Atlanta team that showed a lot of heart last week. They were down 12 points going into the fourth quarter and pulled that game out. And like I touched upon, they outgained Green Bay 446 to 224, 222 yards they outgained it by. In the first two games on defense, again, facing pretty, I would say, bottom third of the NFL offenses, but they did their job. They did what they were supposed to do. They held their first two opponents to 251 yards a game. I think I'm going to be in the minority here. I think Detroit's going to get a lot of action here, and I'm going to go and be in the minority and take the Atlanta Falcons here plus the 3 against Detroit. Paul, your thoughts?
Well, Detroit has some problems on defense. They lost a few guys on Sunday. There was no problem on offense. And I think Jared Goff, he was 11 for his first 12, went for over 300, but they have issues on the offensive line. Taylor Decker did not play on Sunday. He's a very good offensive lineman. And now Vitae, they won't put him on the injured reserve, but he's questionable for Sunday and may not play. So Detroit has issues, but on the other side, Atlanta, the best receiver Atlanta has faced all year is probably Laviska Shenault, because they didn't face anybody against Green Bay, and they didn't face anybody in week 1, and Carolina did run the ball against them. So Hubbard ran 9 times for 60. Miles Sanders ran the ball. Frankly, I just don't know where to go with this, because I don't know the status of, again, Detroit's players, injuries to the linebackers as well as the offensive line. But if those guys are in protecting Jared Goff, I think he's going to have some success. By the way, Amon St. Brown went out with cramping on Sunday. I think he'll be back in the lineup without an issue. Cramping doesn't normally keep you out. But, if everything falls in place, I could see this being a very close game. So certainly the points might be worth looking at, but I could also see some points here because, again, Atlanta's going to be facing an offense that they really haven't seen to this point after taking on the likes of a Green Bay team and this Carolina team, which was an exercise in futility last night.
Yeah, certainly. All good points, Paul, and well taken. And again, that probably won't be, it might be, I don't know. Again, it's Tuesday, folks, okay? We're giving you free picks here. These games aren't until Sunday, and these lines are subject to change that we're giving you right now because it's still early week. But if you've been with us the last 2 weeks, you know that we know what we're talking about because we've been winning. And Chip, I got something for you on this matchup because I know you love teasing me about NFL betting angles, which you know that I love. And anytime you have a non-division away underdog of between 2 and 5 points within that parameter, which Atlanta's +3, and it's the first half of the season, games 2 through 8, and the home team is coming off a loss like Detroit is. How about 21-0 against the spread and 20-0-1 straight up for favoring the underdogs in this situation? So if you've been with us for a while now and you saw me do shows with Chip, when I mention these NFL betting angles, like I did last week, and if it's a 95% angle, he'll always say, but Ross, 5% of the time they don't cover. Well, this is 21-0 ATS. So 0% of the time they don't cover. Anyway, Your thoughts on this game instead of the angle, Chip?
All right. No, I love the angles, by the way. Don't stop them. At the beginning of the year, during the summer, I saw so much future action on Detroit. I was really looking to fade them this year. They come out and they win the opening game at Kansas City on the Thursday night. Now they come home, a favorite against a beaten home favorite in Seattle, and it was a perfect spot to fade them. I think it was a great play to have the beat of Seattle last week against Detroit. Now they're in a situation again where you say, I'm looking once again to fade this team because I think for the most part that the public is enamored with them, with their offense and the showings that they had, and they're going to be looking to play them whenever they can, particularly at home. And this is a small number to be able to lay. I think it may be a come and get me type play because Atlanta, though they've won, hasn't been all that impressive in the way they've won. They won really close, tight games, and I don't think Atlanta has the public sentiment or attitude that the Lions have right now. So I would fade the Lions.
It's scary because you actually were saying pretty much what I was saying in that regard, which is good. I feel good about that because Chip's really good at assessing lines and knowing when to fade teams and when to jump on, and his track record speaks for itself. Paul Bovi's does as well. Paul, I mean, this line, if you would have looked at it prior to week 2, showed Detroit as a -6. Then when you looked at it on Sunday night, it showed Detroit as, I believe, -3.5 and now down to 3. So is me and Chipper's assessment on possible sharp money going the way of Atlanta and public, probably the majority of public money going the way of Detroit? Are we onto something there, or do you think that it's too early to really make a call on that?
No, I think you're onto something, and I saw a number that was higher than 3.5. Actually, I saw 4.5, and then it's come down to 3. And I think you're going to have buyback on 3, and I think you'll have buyback on 3.5. So I think it's going to settle right around here. I don't think there's any way this goes to 2.5 because then they're basically saying that Atlanta is going to beat Detroit at home and they're a 5-point better team, and or a 4-point better team. I just don't see that. So I could see, like I said, I can sense a close game here because I think Detroit is going to be able to match scores with them. No question. It's just a question of Detroit's defense, which they didn't hold up on Sunday. I mean, you're right. Geno Smith put up gaudy numbers against them, and I was shocked. I thought Detroit would come out with a win at least. I did have the over in the game. That was my second biggest play, is the over, and it was basically a coaster. And I had Goff over 264 because this Seattle secondary is bad, but I definitely could see this game coming down to the wire and Atlanta covering the number.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Reviewing again, I like Atlanta plus the 3 over Detroit. Chipper likes the Buffalo Bills -6.5 on the road at Washington. And Paul Bovi likes the New Orleans Saints -2 on the road at Green Bay to beat the Packers, or to cover against the Packers. Well, they better beat them because they're +2. But then again, for all of those of you who don't like to lay money line favorites when you're getting 2.5 or less, let me remind you, we talked about Atlanta and Green Bay last week, right, guys? Atlanta, I believe, Atlanta closes a 2.5-point favorite. Some places might have been 3, but if you got down early enough, it was 2.5, and they only won by 1. So how'd you like to, lose, winning the game by 1 and losing as a 2.5-point favorite? Not very good. Anyway, all right, let's get to what's going on coming up this week, boys. And I know it's early, and I know it's a long way before any of us are posting yet. But maybe fill them in on what you've been good at lately and what you foresee coming up. And again, folks, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please take a second to do so. There's no strings attached. There's no hidden agenda. If you're watching on your PC, you'll see a WC logo right in the bottom right-hand corner of your video boxes. Click on that. That'll get you subscribed. If you're on your mobile device, there's a black subscribe button right underneath the video box. Click on that. That'll get you subscribed. Again, it's absolutely free, and you're privy to some of the best handicapping information, best sports betting information you'll find anywhere on the internet today. And you'll be hard-pressed to find a better podcast than what we put together on a weekly basis here. Also, folks, there's a like button. Give us a like. It's just a small token of appreciation for the work and time and effort and the preparedness we put into these videos to make you a smarter sports bettor today than yesterday. Okay, Chipper, what do you got coming up possibly? And again, remind the folks, you said your standalone game's doing well?
Yeah, they're at 67% over the last 3 years combined, and off to a great start again this season. And, I've also put together a triple play of early bird selections on Saturday and hit 2 out of 3 last week with underdog outright winners, Missouri and Ohio. So these games come in. I'm going to post a 3-game pack, and you can build your bankroll for my big game of the week, which is going to be later in the afternoon or in the evening, actually. And of course, on Sunday, I love the Fab Five, and I come out with my 5 top plays. Wasn't a profitable game last week, though we did come out with a winner. We didn't do it with the pig package. So Fab Five on Sunday and my Build Your Bankroll triple play early on Saturday.
Yeah, we discussed our picks before the game started prior to the noon kickoffs. And
Right.
I said I liked Ohio, and Chipper said, I love Ohio, Ross, but they scare me. And I felt like saying, every time I've said that to you in the past, Chip, you always say, what are you scared of, Ross? The worst you can do is lose. Anyway, Paul, what might you have coming up this week?
Well, we're going to have a totals package. I hit 2 out of 3 totals on Sunday, led by San Francisco and the Rams over the 44.5, which was a pretty easy win. And it got easier at the end by that mysterious field goal with no time on the clock, which broke the back of a lot of bettors out there.
Man.
Okay, and triggered much discussion. But we'll have several totals up there. We will have a few college plays. I will make my mark this week, and we're going to win. So get on board, and let's cash some tickets.
2 of the finest handicappers, not only in the country, but in the world, folks. When it comes to sports betting, 2 guys have been doing it for a long time and very successfully. You could find them both at gamblersworld.net. You could find me there as well. I don't want to keep beating on my chest, but you know what? When you have a week like I did, if I'm not beating on my chest now, I never will. I had just a dream week, folks, and I plan on coming right back. And like I said early last week, I'm ready to kick ass. I'm ready to kick ass again. Okay, I went 12-0 with my football picks last week, 7-0 in college football, 5-0 in the NFL, 2 best bet winners, 1 each in the NFL and college football, 15-1 in all sports, including Major League Baseball since last Tuesday. That takes me to this, okay? We have weekly, monthly packages that you can get 7 days of all-inclusive picks from each of us, 30 days of all-inclusive picks from each of us. We make our hay during football season. That's where the most attention is garnered, and that's what most of you like to bet on. Not to say that a lot of you don't bet on other sports, but $5.99 for an NFL annual package. $5.99 for a college football annual package. If you put the 2 together, college football and the NFL, $8.99. Invest in one of us long term, because that's the only way that you're going to get the best bang for your buck. If you want to just jump from a guy that's hot to the next guy that's hot to the next guy that's hot, chances are, folks, you're going to be betting on guys at the tail end of their win streaks. All win streaks come to an end, even mine sometime. I don't plan on that happening this week, but that's the reality of the situation. So for Chip Chirimbes, Paul Bovi, and Ross Benjamin, we'd like to wish each and every one of you all the very best. Take care and God bless, folks.
Thank you, Ross.